Inside a crystal shop, our protagonist Sean stood completely mesmerized by the newly arrived stones, staring at them as if each one held an entire universe inside. The way they reflected the sunlight and sparkled with strange colors instantly captured his attention. The shop owner noticed his excitement and happily began showing him around, explaining the different kinds of crystals one by one. But before Sean could lose himself any further in that world, the university bell suddenly rang. The owner laughed and told him to hurry before he missed his lectures, promising he could always come back later and look around as much as he wanted. As Sean rushed through the streets, he admitted he couldn't even remember when his obsession with crystals first began. Every time he looked into one, it felt like there was another mysterious world hidden deep inside, completely different from reality. Sometimes he imagined that if he stared long enough, he'd be pulled into that world and live an adventure beyond anything he could imagine. He could only wish something like that would actually happen. Later that night, he returned home and had dinner with his mother. Excitedly, he told her about the crystal shop and described one particular crystal that made him feel as though it contained endless secrets hidden within it. His mother immediately guessed it was quartz, surprising him with how quickly she knew. But then he remembered she was an archaeologist, so of course she would know about things like that. He then asked when she planned to return to work, and she told him it would probably take another year or two. After that, she asked if he was excited for the weekend, and his face instantly lit up. He told her he couldn't wait for his father's birthday because, for once, his father was finally supposed to celebrate with them at home instead of being buried in work. Sean even promised that no matter what happened, he'd personally drag his father home if he had to. The week quickly passed, and on the day of the celebration, Sean sent his father a message reminding him not to be late this time. The party would start at 7 sharp. But when the clock finally hit 7, his father still hadn't shown up, and none of their calls were being answered. His mother tried to calm him down and suggested they start eating while waiting, but Sean refused. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. Without wasting another second, he rushed out of the house and headed straight for his father's workplace. Meanwhile, his father, Professor Hasinga, was completely consumed by his research and hadn't even noticed the calls coming in. But at that exact moment, the story suddenly shifted to a mysterious boy named Emilio. Judging by his clothes and surroundings, he clearly belonged to another era, maybe even another world entirely. Holding a dagger tightly in his hand, Emilio silently sneaked through a massive palace until he finally reached the king's chamber. Slowly, he raised the blade, preparing to kill the sleeping king in a single strike. But just before he could do it, the king suddenly woke up and caught him. And the shocking part, the king was Emilio's own uncle. The king mocked him, calling him a coward for trying to assassinate him in his sleep. He said that if Emilio truly wanted to reclaim his father's throne, then he should have challenged him face to face instead of hiding in the dark. The moment Emilio heard his father mentioned, his expression changed completely. Furious, he ordered the king never to speak about him again before pulling a massive weapon straight out from his own chest. The king immediately drew his weapon as well, and the two clashed in a fierce battle. From the very first clash, it was obvious Emilio stood no chance against the king. Dieselin completely overpowered him and ordered the guards to throw him into prison. Sitting alone inside his cell, Emilio remembered the truth that had destroyed his childhood. After his father, the former king, died, Dieselin had taken him in and raised him, making Emilio believe he genuinely cared about him. But one day he accidentally overheard the palace servants talking and learned the horrifying reality. Dieselin hadn't been his protector. He had been his father's enemy all along and the one responsible for killing him. From that moment on, Emilio buried his emotions deep inside and spent years training in silence, waiting for the day he could finally take revenge and reclaim the throne that belonged to him. At the same time, Sean arrived at his father's company and entered his office, only to realize no one was there. But then he noticed something strange sitting nearby, a glowing blue crystal unlike anything he had ever seen before. Unable to resist his curiosity, he reached out and grabbed it. Instantly, the crystal released a blinding blue light, opening a portal right in front of him. Before he could even react, the crystal fused into his chest and Sean vanished completely. The next thing he knew, he had been transported into Emilio's world. Confused and disoriented, Sean looked around in panic while Emilio bombarded him with questions, demanding to know who he was, where he came from, and whether he was from the surface. But Sean couldn't answer any of it because he himself had no clue what was happening. Growing irritated, Emilio warned him to hide before the guards found them both. But before they could move, the guards suddenly appeared. Sean froze in fear, convinced they were finished. Yet at that exact moment, something awakened inside him. A weapon suddenly emerged straight from his chest, and almost instinctively, he grabbed it and swung. With a single strike, he completely destroyed the guards, unleashing such overwhelming power that the entire prison started collapsing around them. Ironically, that same attack shattered Emilio's cell as well, giving him the chance to escape. Realizing this was their only opportunity, Emilio grabbed Sean and the two ran for their lives. Back in the real world, Professor Hasinga returned to his office and was horrified to discover the crystal was gone. Just then, his wife called, asking where Sean was since he still hadn't come home. Hearing that, his father stood there in shock, terrified that the thing he feared most had actually happened. Meanwhile, Emilio and Sean continued fleeing through the palace, but one of the king's elite guards suddenly appeared before them. The man looked less like a human and more like a monster, and Sean was terrified the moment he saw him. Unfortunately, they had no choice but to fight. The guard proved far stronger than expected and quickly overwhelmed them, knocking both of them into the water below. Emilio immediately grabbed Sean and pulled him into a hidden underground passage before the guards could catch them. As they moved through the dark tunnel, Sean finally asked where they even were. Emilio told him the name of this world was Andorra. After escaping through the passage, they climbed back to the surface, where a girl rushed toward them in panic the moment she saw Emilio. Relieved that he was safe, she quickly asked who the strange boy beside him was. Emilio looked at Sean for a moment before revealing the truth. Sean was from the surface. The moment things calmed down, Sean immediately started firing questions at Emilio, demanding to know how a prince could end up locked in prison, and what kind of bizarre world this even was. He insisted Emilio owed him answers since, without his help, he never would have escaped. Emilio instantly snapped back, saying he would have escaped perfectly fine on his own, and that Sean was the real reason everything turned into chaos in the first place. Before long, the two were already arguing nonstop. Alicia quickly stepped in to stop them before things got worse. She introduced herself properly to Sean and explained that the small creature beside her was named Flareon. Afterwards, Sean desperately tried finding some way back home, but it was hopeless. Even his phone had no signal in this strange underground world. Meanwhile, the king had already begun hunting for Emilio. After hearing the report from the guard who had knocked them into the river, he ordered his men to search for both Emilio and the mysterious boy who helped him escape. As the group continued traveling, Sean kept asking where they were going, but Emilio completely ignored him the entire time. Seeing this, Alicia explained that they were heading to meet someone named Pascal. According to her, Pascal was the man who raised and trained Emilio, as well as a brilliant scholar who owned a small research facility in his home. But before they could reach him, a giant beast with a crystal horn suddenly appeared and attacked. Emilio instantly summoned his weapon and blocked the creature head-on while Alicia ordered Flareon to help him. In the blink of an eye, the tiny cute creature transformed into a massive ferocious beast and slammed into the monster. Sean sighed in relief, only for another creature to suddenly appear right after. The sight alone terrified him so badly that his weapon emerged again automatically. Acting on instinct, Sean grabbed it and unleashed a single devastating strike that shattered the monster's crystal horn instantly. Emilio was left stunned by the sheer power of Sean's weapon, but the moment Pascal finally appeared, his attention shifted immediately. Pascal only needed one look at Sean to realize he was from the surface. However, what truly confused him was the strange weapon emerging from Sean's chest. Once they arrived at Pascal's home, Sean became fascinated by the countless crystals scattered around the place and started touching everything he saw, while Emilio continuously yelled at him to stop. The two immediately fell back into arguing again, causing Alicia to complain that they had been fighting nonstop since the second they met. But Pascal simply laughed and reassured her that one day, the two would probably become close friends. Later, they sat down to eat together, though Sean struggled with the strange food in this world. Still, he was too hungry to complain much. Once dinner ended, he immediately asked Pascal if there was any way for him to return home. Pascal first asked how he had arrived in Andorra to begin with, and Sean explained everything about finding the crystal in his father's office and being transported the moment he touched it. Hearing that, Pascal finally understood what had happened. He cleared the table, spread out a map, and showed Sean the location of Andorra. The revelation shocked him completely. This entire world existed underground. Unlike the surface, Andorra received its light from a gigantic moon-like crystal that absorbed light from the North Pole and reflected it throughout their world. Sean quickly lost interest in the scientific explanation and asked the only thing he cared about: how to get home. Pascal then revealed that long ago, before his time, Andorra had once been connected to the surface through a city called Babylon. Its counterpart underground was known as Babel, a gateway that allowed travel between both worlds. But after Babel was destroyed, the connection between the surface and Andorra was severed. The current king had been trying to repair it ever since, but several major problems were preventing the restoration from being completed. The moment Sean heard there was still a chance, he immediately declared he would go to Babel himself and wait there until it was repaired. Alicia warned him that Babel was incredibly far away, but Sean refused to give up. He missed his parents too much and was willing to do anything to return home. But before they could discuss it further, Pascal suddenly sensed danger. The royal guards had already surrounded the house from every direction. With no time to waste, Pascal revealed a secret airship he had built long ago and saved for emergencies. He rushed everyone on board and launched into the sky just as the guards closed in. While flying away, Pascal admitted something important to Sean: he had personally helped build Babel, and he was also the reason the king was struggling to repair it now. There was a secret flaw within the city that he had never told anyone about, and until they solved it, the repairs would remain impossible. Even so, Sean felt relieved knowing there was still hope. Excited, he begged Pascal to take them directly to Babel immediately, but Pascal refused, explaining they first needed to head to a hidden base he had prepared. Sean kept arguing nonstop until Emilio finally lost patience completely and told him to shut up already. In the end, Pascal ignored all their complaints and led everyone to his so-called hideout. But the moment they arrived, Sean and Alicia were stunned because the place looked like nothing more than a giant hole in the ground. Alicia stared at Pascal in disbelief, wondering how this was supposed to protect them from the king's guards. Pascal simply smiled and told her not to judge too quickly. And once they climbed down, they discovered an enormous hidden underground shelter beneath the surface. As they walked deeper inside, Emilio and Sean somehow managed to turn even walking into a competition. Every time Sean moved ahead, Emilio sped up to pass him, forcing Sean to do the same. Alicia could only watch in confusion at how childish the two were acting despite everything happening around them. After settling in for a short rest, Pascal quietly pulled Emilio aside and asked him to explain exactly how he met Sean. Emilio revealed that while he was imprisoned, a mysterious portal suddenly opened and Sean came out of it. But before it closed, Emilio caught a glimpse of another world unlike anything he had ever seen. Curious, he asked Pascal if that place had been the surface world. Pascal confirmed it immediately. At the same time, Sean was talking with Alicia, telling her how bizarre Andorra felt compared to his own world. He admitted he had never read anything specifically about a place like this, though he had always enjoyed stories about hidden worlds beneath the earth. He even joked that if people on the surface discovered Andorra, it would become one of the greatest discoveries in human history. Meanwhile, Pascal explained something important to Emilio. According to ancient texts, the people of Andorra were repeatedly warned never to establish contact with the surface. The dangers of interacting with surface dwellers had been recorded countless times. But eventually, people from the surface discovered traces of Andorra and came searching for riches hidden underground. Soon after, the city of Babel was built, making travel between both worlds easy. Then suddenly, for reasons still unclear, Babel was destroyed. Ever since then, the king had obsessed over rebuilding it. Pascal explained that he once worked directly on the project and constantly received orders from the palace regarding its progress. But eventually, he abandoned the research facility because he completely disagreed with the king's goals. In fact, before leaving he secretly altered parts of Babel's design to make restoring it nearly impossible. And now, his plan was to send Sean back home first, then destroy Babel permanently to sever the connection between both worlds forever. Pascal then looked directly at Emilio and told him he was willing to help with the thing Emilio truly wanted. Emilio seemed confused at first, asking what he meant. Pascal reminded him of the reason he infiltrated the palace that night in the first place, the reason he ended up imprisoned. Those words instantly brought back painful memories for Emilio. After learning the truth about his father's death, his entire childhood changed. Instead of playing like other children, he trained with a sword every single day. He remembered Pascal becoming his mentor, taking responsibility for his training, and teaching him countless things inside the laboratory where they spent years together. But eventually, Pascal confronted the king himself and warned him that restoring Babel would bring disaster to Andorra. The king ignored every warning, banished Pascal from the palace, and separated him from Emilio. On top of that, the king gradually took away nearly everyone Emilio cared about. Later, Pascal returned to the group and explained they would need supplies if they planned to remain hidden for a while. He decided to head to a nearby village to gather what they needed while disguised so nobody from the palace would recognize him. Alicia also volunteered to fetch water before returning. Once they were finally alone, Emilio suddenly asked Sean if he truly wanted to return to his world. Sean immediately answered yes without hesitation. Emilio then told him there was only one way that could happen. He needed Sean's help killing the king. Sean was horrified and instantly refused, saying he could never help murder someone. But Emilio coldly told him that if the king stayed alive, he would never make it back home anyway. Faced with no other option, Sean reluctantly agreed. That night, after everyone fell asleep, Emilio quietly woke Sean up and the two snuck out of the hideout together. They climbed to the top of a hill overlooking several camps below while Emilio carefully observed the area. Sean stood beside him completely confused, still having no idea what Emilio was planning. But before he could even ask, a group suddenly appeared behind them and surrounded the two, demanding to know exactly what they were doing there. Emilio introduced himself to the group, declaring that he was the Prince of Andorra and that he wanted to meet their leader. Suspicious, one of the rebels demanded to know why a prince would come looking for them. Emilio answered without hesitation he wanted their help to overthrow the king. The rebels eventually escorted him and Sean to their leader. Once there, Emilio explained that while living in the palace, he had secretly heard rumors about the Ignatus group, a rebel organization that hated King Dieselin and wanted to bring down his rule. That was exactly why he had come. He wanted to join forces with them and kill the king himself. The leader was surprised and asked why Emilio would betray the man who had raised him like his own son. The moment he heard that, Emilio's expression darkened. He angrily declared that Dieselin meant nothing to him and that he was not his father. The leader then asked a far more important question: what would happen after the king died? What kind of future did Emilio actually want for Andorra? But Emilio had no answer. After a long silence, he admitted that revenge was all he cared about. He simply wanted to see the king dead. Hearing that instantly disappointed the leader. He grabbed Emilio by the collar and called him a fool, saying a man driven only by revenge could never become a true king. Around them, the other rebels started urging their leader to eliminate both Emilio and Sean since they had already seen the camp and could expose their location at any time. But instead of attacking them, the leader mocked Emilio, saying King Dieselin must deeply regret raising someone so pathetic. Furious, Emilio immediately drew his weapon and attacked. But despite Emilio using a far stronger weapon, the leader effortlessly defeated him with a simple basic blade and slammed him to the ground. Seeing this, Sean rushed in and summoned his own weapon. But the moment the leader saw it, he was visibly shocked by its incredible power. Still, with one swift move, he trapped Sean, tied him up, and hung him upside down from a nearby tree like it was nothing. Then the leader coldly told Emilio that he had no need for a weak prince to guide them. If anyone was going to kill the king, he would handle it himself. Hanging helplessly from the tree, Sean suddenly shouted at the leader, insisting that Emilio deserved a chance. He argued that Emilio could become a king worthy of ruling Andorra after Dieselin and begged them to at least listen to him before judging him completely. Those words surprisingly impressed the leader. He cut Sean down and allowed him to fall back to the ground before turning toward Emilio once again. He told him that if he truly wanted to join Ignatus, then he would have to prove his worth first. And if he managed to show them he was capable of becoming a real king, then the rebels would stand beside him as his right hand. Meanwhile, Pascal arrived at a nearby village disguised so the royal soldiers wouldn't recognize him. After entering a small shop and making sure nobody else was around, he finally removed his disguise and greeted the shopkeeper, who turned out to be an old friend. Pascal admitted that the king's forces had already realized he was the one sabotaging Babel's system and preventing its restoration. But what truly bothered him was understanding why the king remained so obsessed with reconnecting Andorra to the surface despite all the ancient warnings about the disaster it could bring. Back at the rebel camp, Emilio and Sean officially began living among the Ignatus members. Their very first task ended up being something far less heroic than expected: doing laundry alongside everyone else. While working, Sean met a strange boy named Elogia. During the chores, Elogia accidentally slipped into the water and nearly drowned before the others pulled him out. The moment he recovered, everyone immediately asked him what he had seen. Confused, Sean asked what they meant, and the group explained that whenever Elogia came close to death, he gained glimpses of the future. Elogia then revealed that he had seen Sean standing inside a strange, unfamiliar world that looked exactly like the surface. Hearing this made Sean incredibly happy, because it confirmed he really would return home someday. However, Elogia hid one important detail from him in the vision. Sean had looked completely horrified by whatever he was seeing. At the same time, Pascal finally returned to the hideout, only to discover that both Emilio and Sean were gone. Alicia worriedly explained that they had disappeared without saying anything. Pascal immediately realized what had probably happened: they must have gone after Babel on their own. Without wasting time, he and Alicia boarded the airship again and set off to search for them before they could reach the city. Meanwhile, after finishing the laundry, Sean and Emilio immediately started fighting again. Emilio kept ordering Sean around nonstop, while Sean absolutely hated taking commands from him. The argument quickly escalated into insults, and in the heat of the moment, Sean mockingly said it made sense coming from someone trying to kill his own father. That single sentence pushed Emilio over the edge. He instantly punched Sean, and the two began brawling while the rebel leader and the others casually watched from above, joking that eventually the two idiots would tire themselves out and stop on their own. After beating each other senseless, both Emilio and Sean collapsed onto the ground completely exhausted. The rebel leader eventually ordered the others to wake them up, because it was time for an important meeting. Once everyone gathered, the leader explained that their first priority was gaining the support of the northern people, since many of them already hated the king for exiling them and treating them like outcasts in Andorra. But even if they managed that, it still wouldn't be enough to challenge the royal army. The problem was that almost nobody trusted the Ignatus group. Most people despised them, and on top of that, they had no idea how massive the king's forces truly were. That was when Emilio revealed something important. Since he had lived in the palace, he knew the size of the royal army, personally around 80,000 soldiers. The entire group was stunned. There was simply no way they could gather a force larger than that. But the leader already had another plan in mind. He told everyone they needed to recruit the Zhu clan. The moment he said that, the entire room went silent. Even Emilio looked shocked. He immediately argued that the Zhu clan should be the last people they approached, because they were allied with the king, and many of their warriors already served inside the royal army. He even reminded Shan that the beast-like guard who attacked them earlier belonged to the Zhu clan. Shan admitted they were incredibly powerful, which would make convincing them nearly impossible. Still, the leader insisted there was hope. He explained that not every member of the Zhu clan supported the king. For years, many of them had suffered oppression and discrimination. If Ignatius could promise them a better future after the king's fall, they might agree to join the rebellion. He then asked one of the members, Louis, to prepare herself in case negotiations became necessary. Meanwhile, Shan cared about only one thing: reaching Babel and returning home. So, he told the leader that if they wanted to predict the king's next move, then Babel would definitely become the center of everything. That information immediately caught the leader's attention since he hadn't considered it before. After the meeting ended, Emilio quietly thought to himself that once the leader successfully gained the support of the Zhu clan, Shan would become useless to him. And once that happened, he could finally get rid of him. At the same time, Shan was secretly thinking about using the rebellion for his own benefit as well. If he could steer everyone toward Babel, then he could find a way back to the surface and finally free himself from Emilio's constant control. Later on, Louis approached them and told everyone to get inside a wagon to receive protection against mosquito bites. Apparently, in Andorra, if a mosquito absorbed someone's blood, death would come instantly. Shun immediately rushed inside with Emilio, and while they waited, he asked Louis more about the mysterious Zhu clan. To his surprise, Louis revealed that she herself was half Zuzian. She explained that the people of Andorra had oppressed the Zhu clan for generations, leading to endless conflict between both sides. That was why the clan had become isolated and feared. Shun then became curious about the rebel leader's connection to them. Louis explained that when the leader was younger, he had once been close friends with someone from the Zhu clan. The two had practically grown up together. But one day they witnessed a Zuzian being brutally tortured in public. His friend tried to step in and stop it, but the crowd violently attacked both of them. The leader was too powerless to protect him, and his friend eventually died from the injuries. That tragedy became one of the reasons he hated the current system so deeply. Afterward, Louis left and reported back to the leader, telling him that Emilio and Shan were still constantly fighting. The leader simply laughed and said that as long as they kept clashing like this, eventually they'd grow closer without realizing it. The next day, Emilio went looking for Elogia to ask about his future. Since Elogia could only see visions when near death, Emilio secretly set up a dangerous situation to force another prediction. But Elogia quickly realized what he was trying to do and decided to punish him instead. So he lied. Elogia told Shan that if he managed to catch the legendary blue Andorra bird, he would instantly be returned to the surface. Of course, the bird didn't actually exist. It was just a prank meant to mess with him. But Shan believed every word and immediately ran off searching for it. That reckless decision almost got him killed. Out of nowhere, a royal guard from the Zhu clan appeared alongside a squad of soldiers and ambushed Shan. The moment Emilio learned Shan was in danger, he sprinted toward him without hesitation. Soon after, the rebel leader and the rest of Ignatius joined the battle as well, clashing head-on against the king's Zuzian troops. In the middle of the fight, Shan's weapon suddenly began glowing intensely before transforming into an even larger and more powerful form. With Emilio fighting beside him, Shan charged straight into battle and landed a devastating blow on the Zuzian guard. For the first time, the guard looked genuinely afraid. Realizing the fight was turning against them, the royal soldiers finally retreated, forced back by the combined strength of Shan, Emilio, and the rebels. After the battle, Emilio and Shan ran as fast as they could, completely panicked, until they were finally far away from the fighting. Once they realized they were safe, the tension suddenly broke, and both of them burst out laughing. Emilio still couldn't believe the insane power Shan's weapon had shown during the fight, and for the first time in a while, the two actually seemed to enjoy each other's company. But the peaceful moment didn't last long. The instant they turned around, they found Pascal and Alicia standing right behind them. Alicia was furious, immediately yelling at them for running off and leaving her behind. Pascal tried explaining how he managed to track them down so quickly, but nobody was listening to him at all. Before the argument could continue any further, the rebel group arrived as well. Shan instantly became nervous, worried the rebels might attack Pascal and Alicia now that they had discovered the hideout. But surprisingly, the group didn't care much. They simply told Emilio and Shan they were heading out and that the two should catch up later. Not wanting to get lost, Shan hurried after them, while Alicia chased after Shan so he wouldn't wander off alone again. Pascal and Emilio followed behind, though Emilio looked noticeably irritated the entire time. Later, after the group settled temporarily, Pascal quietly sat down with Emilio and finally asked him the question he had been avoiding all this time: why exactly did he want to kill the king who raised him? Emilio answered immediately. According to him, the king was responsible for murdering his real father. But Pascal asked him something that completely caught him off guard. How do you know that's true? Emilio admitted he had no actual proof. It was simply something he overheard years ago. Hearing that shocked Pascal. He pointed out that Emilio was willing to destroy everything based on rumors that might not even be true in the first place. Still, Emilio refused to back down. He insisted the king had obviously done it because he craved power. Pascal responded that even if Dieselin truly was responsible, there might have been reasons Emilio still didn't understand. But Emilio refused to hear anything positive about the king. Eventually, Pascal lost patience and bluntly told him that instead of drowning in hatred, he should speak directly to the king himself and finally learn the truth. Meanwhile, the rebel leader guided the rest of the group to a small restaurant in a nearby village, where they planned to stay temporarily. Since there were no royal guards around, the village was considered relatively safe for now. One of the rebels asked the leader what he planned to do with Emilio and Sean. The leader admitted that both of them had proven surprisingly useful during the previous fight, especially after seeing the terrifying power of Sean's weapon. He believed they could become valuable allies later on. As for the others traveling with them, he didn't consider them nearly as important. Right then, loud shouting erupted outside the restaurant. Everyone looked over and realized it was Sean arguing with the owner, who refused to let him enter. The leader eventually stepped in and convinced the owner to allow him inside. The moment Sean sat down, he immediately started complaining. He said he was sick of constantly being stuck between Pascal and Emilio's endless arguments, while Alicia kept taking her frustration out on him. More than anything, he just wanted to reach Babel and finally return home. Hearing this, the leader pulled out a map and showed Sean just how far away Babel actually was. The journey would take a very long time, and they'd have to cross multiple dangerous territories filled with deadly enemies along the way. Realizing how impossible the trip looked immediately discouraged Sean a little. Later, he walked over to Emilio and told him that now that Pascal was done lecturing him, they should head back, because the others had probably already finished setting up camp, and they could finally get some sleep. Emilio agreed, and the two returned together. But when they arrived, they were shocked by what they saw. Pascal, the same man who previously called the rebels a bunch of savages, was now casually sitting with them, looking completely comfortable. In fact, he was actually enjoying himself because the rebels genuinely appreciated his inventions and scientific knowledge far more than anyone else ever had. At the same time, Luis approached Alicia and introduced herself properly. Since Alicia had been the only girl traveling with the group, she seemed genuinely happy to finally have another girl around. Emilio, however, still looked irritated with Pascal and was just about to start another argument when Felix suddenly grabbed both him and Sean. Clearly tired of their non-stop fighting, he dragged the two away and ordered them to help scout the surrounding area instead. Meanwhile, Pascal quietly activated a strange device he had brought with him. After checking the readings, his expression immediately darkened. The royal laboratory was getting dangerously close to solving the problem with Babel, and that was the last thing he wanted to see. After a long journey, Emilio and the others finally arrived at the city of Andreas. Beyond it lay only a single sea separating them from Babel. Hearing that made Sean incredibly excited because he was finally getting closer to returning home. But before crossing over, the rebel leader explained that they first needed to stop at the island controlled by the Zhu clan and negotiate with them directly. Only after that would they continue toward Babel. Even so, Sean could barely contain his excitement. Everything around him felt completely different from the places he had seen before, and he was fascinated by the city's atmosphere. The group rented rooms at a hotel for the night, with Sean and Emilio once again forced to share the same room. Seeing how excited Sean looked, Pascal and Alicia suggested he go explore the city while they had the chance. Besides, everyone needed warmer clothes since the island ahead was freezing cold and impossible to survive in with their current outfits. Alicia told Emilio to come along with Sean so they could all shop together, but Emilio instantly refused, saying there was no way he would willingly spend time with him. Sean immediately fired back that he didn't want to go with Emilio either, and the two started arguing all over again. Alicia finally snapped and ordered both of them to stop complaining because they were going shopping whether they liked it or not. In the end, Emilio reluctantly agreed, and the three headed into the city together. Sean was having the time of his life. While wandering around, they ran into the rebel leader and Elagia. The two laughed at how amazed Sean looked and suggested different places around the city that he should check out. Taking their advice, the group spent the day exploring while Alicia paid for everything since neither Emilio nor Sean had any money on them. But in the middle of their outing, a young boy suddenly snatched Emilio's dagger and ran off. Emilio immediately chased after him while Sean and Alicia followed close behind. When they finally caught the boy, Emilio grabbed him and sternly told him that stealing was wrong. However, Alicia soon noticed several younger children hiding nearby and watching nervously. Realizing the boy was trying to feed his siblings, she softened immediately. She bought food for all of them, while Sean spent some time playing with the children. Watching him interact with them, Alicia quietly admitted that Sean really was a kind-hearted person. As night began falling, the group packed up their things and started heading back to the hotel. But on the way, Emilio suddenly noticed an arrow flying straight toward them. He instantly shoved Sean and Alicia out of the way just before it struck. A mysterious girl appeared before them wearing a metal collar around her neck, and the only words she kept repeating were, "Kill the prince." Without hesitation, Sean, Emilio, and Alicia prepared to fight back. But the girl unleashed a non-stop barrage of explosive arrows, forcing them completely on the defensive. What shocked them most was that her weapon resembled the same kind of power Sean and Emilio possessed. Worse yet, she was unbelievably strong. One explosion near Sean sent him crashing to the ground so hard, he couldn't even stand back up. Just when things started looking hopeless, the rebel leader and Elogia arrived. The leader quickly attacked the girl and managed to restrain her before she could fire again. Elogia then revealed the horrifying truth behind assassins like her. Many of them were abandoned children from the streets who happened to awaken powerful weapons. Once discovered, they were captured, stripped of their emotions, and sold to wealthy buyers as living weapons programmed to obey orders without question. Hearing that, the leader immediately shattered the metal collar around the girl's neck. The moment it broke, she snapped out of her trance completely. The leader gently reassured her, explaining that none of what happened was her fault and promising that he wouldn't abandon her. Instead, he invited her to travel with them from now on. The girl quietly accepted. He then brought her back to the hotel and introduced her to everyone else, revealing that her name was Misha. To her surprise, the group welcomed her warmly. Meanwhile, Pascal spoke privately with Emilio and explained that he needed to return temporarily to the royal palace. There were still important things inside the laboratory that he needed for his research. However, he promised he would catch up with them soon and wouldn't stay behind for long. The next morning, everyone gathered together to say goodbye to Pascal before continuing their journey without him. The group boarded a ship that looked like it could fall apart at any second, and Sean honestly couldn't understand how that wreck was supposed to carry all of them across the sea. Alicia just laughed at him, told him to stay positive, and shoved him onto the ship anyway. Once they set sail, Felix and Misha immediately started arguing with each other, both proudly showing off their powerful weapons. Felix especially wouldn't stop bragging, which made everyone laugh even harder after realizing Misha was actually stronger than him. Even Misha herself casually admitted it. Meanwhile, Emilio, already suffering badly from seasickness, approached the leader and asked how he planned to deal with the Zoo clan once they arrived. The leader calmly explained that he wasn't going there to tame them like animals, he intended to speak with them and earn their trust. Emilio argued that the Zuzians had killed many of their allies before and probably wouldn't even allow negotiations to happen. But the leader remained confident. He believed many of the Zuzians were just like them, victims of the same world. He also explained that the island itself was practically a natural prison. The Zoo clan had been isolated there for years, cut off from the rest of Andorra, and escaping or entering was extremely difficult. Hearing that only made Emilio more confused about how they were supposed to reach the island safely in the first place. The leader mocked him, saying it might be difficult for a spoiled prince to handle. But before Emilio could snap back, another wave of nausea hit him, forcing him to walk away in silence. That night, a massive storm crashed into the ship. The waves violently rocked the vessel from side to side while Sean and Emilio desperately tried not to get thrown overboard. Both of them kept slipping around helplessly, with different members of the group saving them every few minutes. By the time morning arrived, they finally reached the island but barely. The ship was completely wrecked. Elogia warned the leader that the vessel was no longer usable, meaning if negotiations with the Zoo clan failed, their journey would end right there. Moments later, the Zuzians appeared. But before the leader could even introduce himself, the entire group was restrained and dragged before the Zuzian chief, Gerardito. He demanded to know why outsiders had come to their island. The leader answered honestly, saying they needed the Zoo clan's strength to overthrow the king. Gerardito then asked the obvious question, what exactly could they offer in return? The leader looked him directly in the eyes and answered with two words: freedom and dignity. He promised that once the king was overthrown, the Zuzians would no longer live as exiles. But Gerardito only scoffed at the idea. He said he would never trust promises made by an Andreas. Confused by the hatred between them, Shun quietly asked Elogia why the Zoo clan despised the Andreas so much. Elogia explained the painful history behind it. Long ago the Andreas used the Zoozians as laborers because of their incredible strength. Those who became sick or too weak to work were abandoned and exiled to this isolated island. To the Andreas, they were treated little better than slaves. Then Gerardito made his decision. He told the leader that if he was truly willing to sacrifice his own life for the coming war, then the Zoo clan would join the rebellion, but only under someone else's command. After thinking silently for a moment, the leader accepted the condition without hesitation. If giving his life was necessary to make the revolution happen, then he was willing to do it. The instant Gerardito ordered one of his men to execute him, Louis suddenly stepped in and stopped them. One by one, the others also stepped forward, offering their own lives instead of the leader's. That unexpected loyalty caught Gerardito's attention. He pulled the leader aside to speak privately, wanting to understand him better. There, the leader finally revealed his true intentions. He explained that he had no desire to start a meaningless war where countless people would die just to remove the king. His real goal was to build such an overwhelming alliance that they could either force the king to surrender or negotiate peacefully, without bloodshed. For the first time, Gerardito truly believed him. He realized this man was completely different from the Andreas, who had oppressed his people for generations. And because of that, Gerardito agreed to join the rebellion. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the island, another faction of Zoozians who still remained loyal to the royal army received news through a messenger bird that Gerardito had sided with the rebels. After hearing the report, one of them suggested they handle the matter personally before the king ever found out about it. After reaching an agreement with the Zoo clan, the group prepared to continue their journey north. Before they left, Gerardito provided them with a massive ship far superior to the wreck they had arrived on, making sure they could travel safely through the dangerous waters ahead. He also handed the leader a small object connected to the legendary Andorra bird, explaining that it could be used to send messages and contact him anytime they needed help. After saying goodbye to the Zoozians, the group finally sailed north. Once they arrived, the leader reunited with several allies waiting for him there. They revealed that many people from the north had already agreed to support the rebellion, meaning there was now a real possibility of overthrowing the king without starting a full-scale war. Hearing that filled the group with hope. But Emilio still wasn't satisfied. No matter how optimistic everyone else became, he remained completely focused on killing the king with his own hands. Seeing how obsessed Emilio was with revenge, Sean finally decided to ask him directly why he hated Dieselin so much. At first Emilio brushed him off, saying there was no reason to explain anything to him. But Sean kept pestering him until Emilio finally gave in. He told Sean that the king was the man responsible for killing his real father. And after Emilio finally found comfort again through Pascal, the king took that away too by banishing him from the palace. Ever since then, revenge had consumed his entire life. Then Emilio asked Sean what he would do if he were in the same situation. Sean answered honestly. If someone murdered his father, revenge would absolutely cross his mind too. But the reason he wouldn't go through with it was his mother. He wouldn't want to hurt her, become a criminal in her eyes, or leave her behind alone. And just like Sean had his mother stopping him from walking down that path, Emilio still had people like Pascal and Alicia who cared about him. Before Emilio could respond, the others called for them to move again. The group continued climbing through a freezing snowy mountain range, and during the journey, Sean suddenly noticed gigantic footprints in the snow. When he nervously asked whose tracks they were, the leader calmly replied that they belonged to dragons. That answer terrified Sean instantly. As Elogia approached to reassure him, the ground suddenly collapsed beneath him, sending him falling into a massive pit. Meanwhile, back at the royal palace, Pascal secretly returned to his old laboratory to retrieve several important books. While there, he unexpectedly encountered a young scientist who immediately recognized him. The scientist turned out to be a huge admirer of Pascal and spoke to him excitedly. During their conversation, Pascal learned something alarming. The scientist revealed that he was the one who had finally solved the problem preventing Babel from being restored. After reporting his findings, the information had already been passed to the king, and preparations to head toward Babel were now underway. At the same time, the others rushed to help Elogia after his fall. Once they confirmed he was safe, the group carefully continued through the pit below the mountain. But suddenly, a gigantic dragon appeared and attacked them. Panicking, they tried escaping the opposite way, only to discover another dragon blocking their path. They were trapped from both sides. Alicia froze in fear. Then something unbelievable happened. Flareon suddenly transformed into a dragon himself, and the moment he did, the attacking dragons immediately stopped. When Alicia touched him afterward, she was shocked to hear him speak directly to her. Strangely, only Alicia, Sean, and Emilio could hear his voice. Flareon revealed the truth. He carried the soul of Alicia's late father inside him so he could continue watching over her even after death. Shocked, Alicia asked how her father had died. Flareon explained that he had once been a powerful hunter. during battle. His weapon evolved and became stronger whenever his fear and desperation increased. But that power came with a terrible cost. It consumed enormous amounts of energy and life force from its wielder. Over time, her father became obsessed with pushing the weapon further and further, until that greed eventually killed him. Even so, Flareon gently reassured Alicia that he would always remain by her side. After saying that, he returned to his normal form. And from that moment on, the dragons completely stopped attacking them. In fact, they began helping the group instead. Realizing the opportunity they had been given, the leader immediately ordered everyone to ride the dragons so they could travel toward their destination far faster than before. The dragons carried the group as far as they could toward Babel, but eventually they refused to go any farther. The closer they got, the more terrified the dragons became of the hunters guarding the area. With no other choice, the group stopped for the night, built a fire, and gathered around it to discuss what they should do next. But during the conversation, Elogia suddenly collapsed unconscious. When he finally woke up, his face was pale with fear. The others immediately asked what he had seen, and Elogia revealed that he had witnessed the future. A future where Andorra itself was destroyed and the giant crystal powering the world had completely lost all its energy. Strangely though, nobody reacted with panic. Instead of fear, most of them simply accepted the possibility of the world ending, almost as if they had already prepared themselves for that fate long ago. Meanwhile, the king and his forces continued advancing toward Babel. During a short stop to rest, the head of the royal laboratory approached Dieselan and proudly informed him that once they arrived, they would finally be able to repair the city completely. Even so, he still couldn't understand why the king was so desperate to restore Babel in the first place. But when he asked, Dieselan coldly refused to explain and ordered him away. At that moment, Ibelda the Zuzian warrior who had previously fought Shan arrived alongside his men, and informed the king that Emilio and the rebel leader had successfully allied themselves with the Zhu clan. But Dieselan immediately noticed Ibelda's injuries. Realizing he had ignored orders and attacked Emilio directly, the king warned him that his mission had only been to observe, not interfere. If he disobeyed again, the consequences would be severe. After leaving the king's camp, Ibelda and the others were visibly frustrated. Their resentment toward Dieselan kept growing, especially after overhearing royal soldiers insulting the Zuzians and calling them monsters behind their backs. Elsewhere, Pascal continued searching desperately through the royal library for information related to Babel. But no matter how many books he checked, he found nothing useful. That alone was suspicious enough to confirm his fears. The king had likely removed every important record connected to Babel. At that point, Pascal realized there was only one person left who could answer his questions: the king himself. He needed to know why Dieselan was so obsessed with reopening Babel. Just then, Joseph, the young scientist who admired Pascal, approached him and revealed that he had activated a special device designed to analyze Andorra's energy levels. The results would be ready by the next day. Meanwhile, back at the rebel camp, Emilio and Shan once again ended up sharing the same tent. Before falling asleep, Shan quietly told Emilio to think carefully before killing the king. No matter what happened in the past, taking someone's life for revenge could never truly be the right answer. The next morning, Alicia excitedly woke them up with good news. More kingdoms had officially agreed to join the rebellion, meaning their forces were becoming powerful enough to challenge the king without needing a bloody war. But even after hearing that, Emilio stubbornly declared that he still intended to kill Dieselan personally. Frustrated, Shan argued back, warning him that his hatred would destroy him the same way Alicia's father had been destroyed. The more hatred and rage Emilio fed into his weapon, the more it would consume his life force until eventually it killed him. Those words instantly enraged Emilio. He shouted that Shan understood absolutely nothing about him. Soon enough, Shan would return safely to his own world, while Emilio would still be trapped in Andorra dealing with everything alone. Because of that, Shan had no right to interfere in his choices. Angry himself now, Shan punched Emilio hard, trying to force him to come to his senses. At the same time, Pascal finally received the results of the energy analysis. The moment he saw them, his expression changed completely. Andorra's energy reserves had dropped to critically dangerous levels. Joseph then showed him older reports from previous years, and together they discovered something horrifying. The energy decline had only started after Dieselan became king. The connection was impossible to ignore. Realizing the danger, Pascal immediately told Joseph they had to reach Babel before Dieselan opened its gate. Joseph then led him into a hidden section of the laboratory where he revealed a secret aircraft he had built himself. Unlike normal ships, this machine was incredibly advanced and fast enough to reach Babel in almost no time. Without hesitation, the two boarded the aircraft and launched toward Babel. And by then, the king had already arrived there. Meanwhile, Shan, Emilio, and the others were rapidly approaching as well. The moment everyone reached Babel, everything was about to change. The moment the group arrived at Babel's entrance, they discovered 4 massive doors standing before them. But according to the ancient mechanism, only one of them would actually lead to the city. Using his strange abilities, Aloja concentrated for a moment before declaring that the fourth door was the correct path. Trusting him, everyone entered through it. Inside, they quickly realized the route forward was blocked and that they needed a key to continue deeper into Babel. Luckily, Emilio managed to find the key almost immediately. The instant he removed it, a hidden passage slowly opened before them. The group advanced carefully through the dark corridor while Misha stayed alert for traps hidden along the way. Eventually, they reached an enormous wall towering above them. With no other option, everyone began climbing. The higher they went, the more exhausting the climb became, and once they finally reached the top, they realized their suffering wasn't over yet. They now had to descend and climb another massive wall on the opposite side. Using ropes, the group carefully lowered themselves down one by one until only Emilio and the leader remained above. Before descending himself, the leader stopped Emilio and told him something important. The revolution had changed. Now that they had gained enough allies and power, there was no longer any need to assassinate the king. Instead of war and bloodshed, they could negotiate with Dieseland directly and force him to listen. But Emilio immediately rejected the idea. No matter what happened, he still intended to kill the king. Unable to understand his obsession anymore, the leader finally asked why Emilio hated his father so much. That was when Emilio revealed the truth. Dieseland was never his real father. He explained everything from the beginning: his father's death, the rumors he overheard, and the hatred that consumed him ever since. But even after hearing all of it, the leader calmly told him one thing: don't raise your sword against Dieseland until you've spoken to him first. Emilio gave no response. He simply climbed down and continued forward alone. As they moved deeper through Babel's endless pathways, Sean found himself conflicted for the first time since arriving in Andorra. All this time, his only goal had been returning home. Once they reached Babel, that dream would finally become possible before the king carried out whatever mysterious plan he had been preparing for so long. But now, Sean wasn't happy about leaving anymore. A part of him wanted to stay in Andorra. He wanted to help Emilio and remain by their side until everything was over. For the first time, he truly didn't know what he wanted. Eventually, the group reached another chamber where Alogia explained that the strange rock before them would lead directly to the final door connected to Babel itself. But before they could move any farther, Ibelda and the rogue Zuzian warriors suddenly appeared and blocked their path. A brutal battle erupted instantly. Ibelda focused entirely on Emilio, attacking him with the clear intention of killing him. While fighting, he mocked Emilio by revealing something shocking: the king had specifically ordered him not to harm the prince before. But now, Ibelda planned to ignore those orders simply because he wanted to. Those words completely shook Emilio. For a moment, he couldn't even focus on the battle anymore. Seeing Emilio hesitate, Sean rushed in immediately to help him, and together they managed to push Ibelda back. Taking advantage of the opening, Emilio sprinted toward the mysterious rock leading to Babel while Sean and Alicia followed close behind, refusing to let him go alone. But right then, another shocking truth came to light: Louis betrayed them. She had been secretly working with the rogue Zuzians the entire time. Louis admitted she never truly cared about the rebellion or the dream of freedom. To her, everything was about money, and she was willing to side with whoever offered the highest reward. She believed the revolution was doomed from the start and that the group would never succeed in changing anything for the Zuzians. When she moved to kill Alogia, the leader stepped in front of him and told her to strike him instead. Louis attacked with everything she had, aiming to finish him in one blow. But she failed. Meanwhile, Emilio finally reached the chamber connected directly to Babel, and there waiting for him was the king himself. At the same time, the head of the royal laboratory informed Dieseland that the gate to Babel would only open for a brief moment before shutting again. If they intended to pass through, they had only a short window of time left. Just before the gate to the surface could fully open, Emilio finally arrived and immediately attacked the king. The two clashed violently inside Babel, their weapons colliding with enough force to shake the chamber itself. At the same time outside, Luz continued fighting the leader, still pretending she intended to kill him, while Abelda desperately tried to force his way into Babel. Realizing the danger, the leader ordered Felix and Misha to stop Abelda no matter what and keep him away from the city. Then, in the middle of the battle, the leader tried speaking to Louis one last time. He told her he couldn't believe she was truly their enemy after everything they had gone through together, especially after she had once saved his life from the Zuzians. He begged her to tell him the real reason behind her betrayal. But instead of answering, Louis kept attacking him over and over with her weapon. The strange thing was, the leader never fought back. He simply stood there calmly, completely convinced that Louis would never actually be able to kill him. And he was right. The moment Louis realized he wasn't resisting at all, her resolve shattered. She suddenly broke down crying and admitted the truth. Yes, she had originally joined them as a spy, but over time she had genuinely grown attached to everyone in the group. At first she thought they were nothing more than reckless savages, but somewhere along the journey, They had become people she truly cared about. As she cried, Elogia quietly walked over and handed her a handkerchief, gently telling her that the past no longer mattered and that they forgave her. Meanwhile, Felix and Misha were still battling Abelda, desperately trying to stop him from entering Babal. But during the chaos, one of Misha's explosive arrows accidentally struck him and sent him flying backward directly onto the teleportation mark leading into the city. In an instant, Abelda vanished. Inside Babel, Sean and Alicia finally caught up just as Emilio continued trying to kill the king. Both of them begged him to stop, but Emilio refused to listen. Consumed by rage, he screamed at Dieselin, accusing him of taking everything from him and murdering his real father. But hearing those words completely shocked the king. Before he could answer, the head of the laboratory finally activated Babel itself. The gate to the surface opened. At that moment, Sean rushed between Emilio and the king, desperately trying to stop the fight. He shouted at Dieselan that if he truly cared for Emilio and had raised him like a son, then he needed to finally tell him the truth about what really happened to his father. But before the king could respond, Abelda suddenly appeared inside Babel. Without hesitation, he attacked Emilio from behind, determined to kill him once and for all. The king immediately ordered him to stop, but Abelda ignored him completely and continued attacking. Even Sean tried stepping in, but he was powerless against him. Then, at the critical moment, Dieselin moved. For the first time, the king threw himself forward to protect Emilio. But just as he reached him, Abelda drove his blade straight through the king's heart. Everything froze. Dieselin collapsed to the ground. Meanwhile, Abelda celebrated wildly, thrilled by what he had done. He declared that he had always dreamed of seeing the surface world and escaping the endless orders and restrictions forced upon him in Andorra. From now on, he would live freely however he wanted. Without waiting another second, he rushed through the open gate toward the surface. But the instant he crossed over, the gate suddenly turned bright red and shut down completely. Inside Babel, Emilio stared at the dying king in complete shock. And for the first time in his life, he finally admitted the truth. Despite everything, he had truly loved Dieselin like a father. As the king took his final breaths, Emilio collapsed beside him, crying uncontrollably. Moments later, Pascal and Joseph finally arrived, only to find Babel already activated, and the king dead before them. They had come too late. Now they would never learn why Dieselin was so desperate to reopen Babel in the first place. Soon after, the leader and the rest of the group entered as well, only to freeze in horror at the scene in front of them. The king was dead. Babel had been activated, and nobody understood what would happen next. The people hit hardest by everything were the leader and the rebels. Their entire revolution had been built around confronting the king, but now Dieselin was dead before any of their plans could truly happen. In the end, the leader gathered everyone and admitted that, yes, their revolution had technically failed. But Andorra still faced countless problems and those issues wouldn't disappear just because the king was gone. For now, he told them to focus on surviving and calming the chaos before worrying about what came next. Meanwhile, Emilio wandered off alone, completely lost in his thoughts. Sean followed after him, trying to cheer him up and pull him out of the darkness he had fallen into. Emilio admitted he didn't even understand his own feelings anymore. From the very beginning, his entire reason for living had been revenge. He had dedicated everything to killing the king himself. But now that Dieselin was dead, he felt nothing close to victory, no happiness, no satisfaction. At first, he told himself maybe it was simply because Abelda had stolen his revenge before he could do it himself. But even then, something still felt wrong. Sean quietly apologized to him, reminding Emilio about the promise he had made long ago that he would help him kill the king. In response, Emilio apologized too. He had promised Sean that he would help him return home someday, but now Babel was shut down, the king was dead, and they had no way of sending him back to the surface anymore. Then Emilio confessed something that disturbed him even more. During his fight with Dieselin, he tried to picture the face of his real father in his mind, but he couldn't. No matter how hard he tried, the only person he could see standing there as his father was Dieselin himself. That realization shattered him. He admitted that Pascal had been right all along. Pascal had tried warning him to speak with the king first and learn the truth before blindly chasing revenge. But Emilio had refused to listen to anyone except his own hatred. And now, it was too late. He didn't even know anymore whether Dieselin had truly murdered his father or not. Worse than that, there were still countless unanswered questions. Why did Dieselin want to open Babel so badly? Why was he trying to reach the surface? What was his true goal all along? All of those answers had died with him. Shun then guided Emilio through the maze-like paths of Babel, trying his best to comfort him. Along the way, they started remembering all the ridiculous moments they had shared since meeting each other, the constant arguments, the fights, and how much they used to hate each other at first. Eventually, both of them started laughing. After calming down a little, Emilio suddenly asked Sean something important. Are you really not upset that you can't return home anymore? But Sean simply smiled. He told Emilio that Babel couldn't possibly be the only path back to the surface. Somewhere out there, another way had to exist. And honestly, Staying in Andorra a little longer didn't sound so bad anymore. Now he could spend even more time with everyone. And whenever he finally returned home someday, he'd have the greatest story imaginable to tell his family. Maybe he'd even write a book about everything and become famous. Either way, according to Sean, he still won. Just then, Alicia finally caught up to them and started yelling for them to hurry up and leave the maze already, because everyone else had been waiting forever. But Sean barely cared anymore. Instead of worrying about being trapped in Andorra, he started messing around on the ropes hanging from the walls, swinging from them like a child. He even forced Emilio to join him. Before leaving Babel, the group decided to wait for Pascal to finish investigating the gate and figure out why it suddenly shut down. But despite all his efforts, neither Pascal nor Joseph could find any clear answer. Something had gone wrong deep within Babel's system, and no matter how many times they tried, the gate refused to activate again. While Pascal continued his research, Sean and Alicia approached him. Pascal apologized to Sean for failing to send him back to the surface. But surprisingly, Sean didn't seem upset at all. Instead, he asked Pascal how they could help Emilio recover from everything that had happened. Pascal answered honestly. Emilio needed something new to focus on. If he stayed trapped in his thoughts, he would only continue drowning in regret. At the same time, Emilio was speaking privately with the leader. He admitted that the reason he had started this journey was now gone. The king was dead and the revolution they fought for had completely fallen apart. So what happens now? He asked. The leader calmly explained that even if the revolution had technically failed, the real battle was only beginning. With Dieselin dead, Andorra would soon descend into chaos, unlike anything they had ever seen before. Now their responsibility was no longer overthrowing the king, it was protecting the world from collapsing afterward. The coming days would be dangerous, and they needed to return to Andorra immediately once Pascal finished his investigation. After the conversation ended, Sean went searching for Emilio. The moment he found him, he pulled out his weapon and challenged him to a sparring match. Emilio immediately refused, saying he wasn't in the mood for pointless fighting. But Sean kept annoying him nonstop until Emilio finally lost patience, summoned his own weapon, and attacked. The two fought fiercely until both of them were completely exhausted. In the end, Emilio finally got serious and landed a finishing strike that sent Sean crashing to the ground, officially winning the match. But even after that, Sean looked up at him and bluntly told him he looked awful constantly walking around with such a gloomy expression. He said Emilio couldn't stay trapped in the past forever, and needed to start thinking about a new purpose for himself. For the first time since Dieselin's death, Emilio actually stopped and thought about those words. And deep down, he realized Sean was right. He needed a new reason to move forward. Meanwhile, Louis suddenly arrived with urgent news. The Andorra bird had delivered a message from the Zoo clan revealing that their island was now under attack and desperately needed help. Louis asked the group to allow her to fight alongside them again. Most of them still didn't trust her after the betrayal except for Elogia and the leader. They told Louis that despite everything, she was still one of them and they believed in her. Felix and Misha, however, made it very clear that they'd still be watching her closely in case she tried anything suspicious again. Then Emilio stepped forward as well. He told the leader that he had finally found a new goal. From now on, he officially wanted to join their group and help them however he could. The entire team immediately welcomed him warmly, admitting that ever since the beginning, they had always felt like Emilio belonged with them anyway. Seeing that, Sean excitedly declared that he wanted to join too. But everyone instantly shut him down, telling him he'd be completely useless. Still, after laughing at him for a while, they agreed to let him stay with them until they eventually found another way to send him home. And honestly, even if he wasn't useful in battle, his endless positivity was something the group had started needing more than they realized. As the group traveled back from Babel, they quickly realized how unstable Andorra had become after King Dieselin's death. In one particular village, chaos had completely taken over. A wealthy and cruel nobleman, along with his guards, was terrorizing the villagers, stealing their food, water, and money while brutally beating anyone who tried to resist. The villagers were powerless against him. Luckily, the leader and the others happened to pass through the village at that exact moment. The instant they saw what was happening, they stepped in and fought back against the guards, successfully driving them away before more people could get hurt. The nobleman barely escaped with a few remaining soldiers and fled back to his mansion. Grateful beyond words, the villagers invited the group to share a small meal with them. Even though they apologized for not having much food, it was obvious something still troubled them deeply. The leader asked what was wrong, and an elderly villager finally explained the truth. While the group had saved them for now, once they left, the nobleman would simply return and punish them all over again. In the end, nothing would truly change. Hearing that, Emilio suggested they go directly to the nobleman's mansion and confront him personally, so he'd never threaten the village again. Everyone agreed immediately, and as the old man listened to Emilio speak, he noticed something different about him. For the first time, he saw the presence of a true king. The next day, the group headed toward the mansion. But the moment they arrived, something felt wrong. There were no guards, no servants, no resistance at all. The entire mansion was eerily silent. As they stepped inside, they found the nobleman sitting alone, trembling in fear. The more they questioned him, the more terrified he became. Confused, Sean and Emilio demanded to know what exactly he was so scared of. But before the man could answer, a blade suddenly pierced straight through his back. Everyone froze. Then, slowly emerging from behind the chair came someone they never expected to see again, Abelda. The entire group was stunned. After crossing the gate to the surface, Abelda should have either died from the red radiation or become trapped forever. Yet somehow he had returned, and he was far more terrifying than before. Without hesitation, Abelda attacked all of them at once. His power had increased so drastically that nobody could keep up with him anymore. Sean and Emilio quickly tried working together, but the moment they launched their counterattack, something horrifying happened. Monstrous creatures suddenly began emerging from inside Abelda's body itself. And no matter how many they destroyed, more kept appearing endlessly. Realizing they couldn't win inside the mansion, the group was forced to retreat outside. Abelda immediately targeted the leader, slamming him to the ground and preparing to kill him on the spot. But just before he could finish him, Gerardo appeared. The former friend of Abelda stepped forward to punish the traitor personally. Unlike everyone else, Gerardo was actually strong enough to overpower him. After an intense clash, Gerardo successfully defeated Abelda and saved the leader's life. Seeing this, the leader finally understood something important. Gerardo wasn't just another warrior. He was a true noble among the Zuzians. The leader immediately offered him a place within their group. Gerardo accepted, but only temporarily. His main goal was still saving the Zuzian island from the crisis threatening it. The leader respected his decision, and the rest of the group welcomed Gerardo warmly as one of their own. As chaos continued spreading across Andorra, rumors about King Dieselin grew worse and worse. People traveled from village to village telling everyone that the king had abandoned his people and fled somewhere far away, leaving Andorra defenseless against attacks, crime, and invading kingdoms. Fear and distrust slowly began consuming the entire world. A few days later, Gerardito managed to secretly leave the Zuzian island and meet with the leader aboard a ship to discuss how they could liberate his people. He explained that 5 enemy warships were already surrounding the island, waiting for the perfect opportunity to attack. If they didn't act quickly, the Zuzians would be wiped out. But before they could continue planning, loud fighting suddenly erupted outside the ship. When everyone rushed out, they discovered Gerardo in the middle of an intense fight against Felix and Misha. The three of them clearly couldn't stand each other at all. Gerardito quickly stepped in and stopped the chaos before it got worse, then officially announced that Gerardo would now be joining the Ignitus faction alongside them. The leader was thrilled. According to him, they couldn't have asked for a stronger ally. After calming down, everyone gathered inside again, where Pascal and Joseph finally revealed the results of their investigation into Babel. Joseph explained that they had discovered the reason Abelda transformed into a monster after passing through the gate. The problem wasn't Babel itself. The real issue was the surface gate. Something about it had malfunctioned, which meant both gates needed to be opened simultaneously if Sean ever hoped to return to his world safely. But compared to what came next, that problem was nothing. Pascal revealed that Andorra's energy levels were dropping faster than ever before. If they didn't find a solution soon, Elogia's terrifying vision would become reality, and the entire world would eventually collapse. After hearing all of this, the leader and Gerardito finalized their strategy for defending the Zuzian island. The next day, the two of them boldly boarded the flagship of the enemy commander attacking the island. At first, they attempted to negotiate peacefully and asked him to withdraw his fleet. But the commander laughed in their faces. To him, it was ridiculous that only 2 men dared stand before an army of 100 soldiers. The leader simply smiled. Then he calmly told the commander that 2 people were more than enough. At that exact moment, the trap was revealed. The Ignitus members had secretly spread themselves across all 5 enemy ships beforehand. Within moments, explosions and attacks erupted everywhere, destroying the entire fleet including the commander's own ship. The invading army was completely annihilated. And just like that, the Zuzian island was finally liberated. Later, everyone gathered at his home to discuss what their next move should be. While there, they met Gerardito's young son, Karam. But the second Karam saw Sean and Emilio. He immediately burst into tears from fear. Not wanting to upset the child any further, the two quietly backed away in embarrassment. Sometime later, Emilio approached Pascal again and asked if he had learned anything more about Dieselin's true goal for reopening Babel. Pascal admitted he only had a theory for now. He believed the king had been trying to meet someone important on the surface world. That was likely the real reason he was so desperate to open the gate. Hearing that left Emilio deep in thought, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't imagine who that person could possibly be. The next morning, Gerardito, the leader, and the rest of the group gathered together, once again, boarded their ship, and continued their journey determined to save Endora before its remaining time ran out. As the group continued traveling across Endora, they spent their time helping villages, stopping corruption, and protecting people from the chaos spreading after the king's death. Eventually, their journey finally brought them back to the capital and the royal palace itself. The moment Sean saw the massive castle clearly for the first time, he was completely amazed. He joked to Emilio that when they escaped the palace before, he never had the chance to truly look at it. Otherwise, he probably would have stayed there admiring it instead of running away. Inside the palace, news of Emilio's return spread instantly. The servants and guards rushed toward him in disbelief. The two maids who had practically raised him burst into tears from happiness after seeing him alive again, while Aaron, commander of the royal guards, immediately embraced him in relief. But the moment Aaron noticed the large group traveling with Emilio, his expression changed. Emilio explained that these people were his companions, the friends he had met during his journey. As they walked deeper into the palace, memories from Emilio's childhood started flooding back to him everywhere he looked. But before anyone could settle in peacefully, tension exploded between Aaron's guards and Felix and Misha, who were wandering through the palace suspiciously. When Emilio stepped in to calm things down, Aaron warned him that he still didn't trust some of his new allies. Emilio reassured him that none of them intended to harm the palace, and that they were all on the same side. Even so, Aaron remained cautious and quietly asked Emilio not to let them get too comfortable. Meanwhile, Pascal and Joseph returned to the royal laboratory and were horrified by what they found. Books and scientific equipment were scattered everywhere across the floor as if no one cared about preserving the knowledge left behind there anymore. Not long after, Ronnie arrived, the scientist who had once been Pascal's teacher. Together, Ronnie, Joseph, and Pascal reunited as an incredibly talented trio of researchers once again. As for Emilio, he wandered through the palace alone, weighed down by heavy emotions. Eventually, he found himself standing before Dieselin's throne, and memories of the king immediately overwhelmed him. The leader quietly approached and subtly suggested something important. The throne now needed someone worthy enough to take responsibility for Andorra, someone like Emilio. Emilio understood exactly what he meant, but he admitted that during his journey, he had realized how little he truly knew about the kingdom itself. The more he learned about Andorra, the more he doubted whether he was fit to become its ruler. That same night, panic spread through the palace after reports arrived that monsters had appeared in the nearby forest. Aaron immediately gathered the royal guards to prepare for battle, but many of the soldiers were terrified. Some even whispered about abandoning the capital entirely. In their minds, the king was dead and Andorra was doomed anyway, and there was no point dying for a collapsing country. Hearing that shocked Aaron completely. He reminded them that their duty as guards was to protect the capital no matter the cost, even if it meant sacrificing their lives. Just then, the leader and his group stepped forward and told Aaron to stand aside. They would deal with the monsters themselves. But when the battle began, they realized something horrifying. The creatures attacking the capital were the exact same monsters created from Abelda's power, and even worse. Abelda himself had returned once again. Despite everything that had happened to him, he somehow survived yet again, almost like he refused to die no matter what, and now he had come back seeking revenge. A massive battle erupted across the area. The group struggled badly because they were forced to fight both the endless monsters and Ibelda at the same time. Seeing how desperate the situation had become, Aaron finally joined forces with the leader, and the royal guards charged into battle alongside the rebels. Meanwhile, Sean, Emilio, and Gerardo focused entirely on fighting Ibelda directly. Working together, the three finally managed to land a devastating attack that destroyed one of Ibelda's eyes. Realizing the battle was turning against him, Ibelda finally retreated alongside his monsters before the group could finish him off completely. Gerardo refused to believe Ibelda was truly defeated. Certain that he would return again, he asked the leader for permission to hunt him down and finish him off once and for all. But the leader warned him that Ibelda was far too dangerous to face alone. To support him, he ordered Felix and Misha to accompany him on the mission. Even that didn't feel sufficient to Emilio, so he assigned several royal guards to join them as well. Without wasting time, the group departed immediately to track Abelda down. Meanwhile, Pascal's research revealed something terrifying. The decline in Andorra's energy was already beginning to destroy the world itself. Droughts were spreading across the land, crops were dying, and entire regions were starting to collapse. Hearing this made the leader feel helpless. Realizing the crisis facing Andorra was becoming far worse than anyone imagined. At the same time, Emilio took Sean to the palace dungeon and explained that this was the exact place where the gate had first opened and transported him into Andorra. If there was any hope of returning home, maybe the answer was hidden somewhere there. Sean climbed up to look deeper into the massive pit below, but all he could see was endless darkness. Curious, Emilio climbed up beside him to get a better view, but the moment he stepped forward, he suddenly slipped. Sean grabbed for him instinctively, but instead both of them lost balance and fell into the abyss together. Luckily, they landed on a lower ledge before reaching the bottom, saving their lives. Even so, the drop back to the surface above was far too high to climb. With no other choice, the two decided to continue descending deeper into the pit. As they moved farther down, they discovered countless skeletons and corpses scattered everywhere. The atmosphere was horrifying, and even Emilio, who grew up in the palace, had never seen anything like it before. Then suddenly, they encountered a massive Zuzian creature bound tightly in chains. Cautiously, Emilio approached and asked who he was. The chained monster introduced himself as Raifal, and the moment he learned Emilio was the king's son, his attitude changed immediately, treating him with respect. Raifal then revealed a shocking truth. Long ago, he had served as the right-hand man of King Azam, Emilio's real father. According to Raifal, everything started changing the day a mysterious man from the surface arrived in Andorra. At first, Sean assumed Raifal was talking about Dieselin, but Raifal denied it immediately. Years earlier, Azam and Dieselin had discovered an unconscious man from the surface world. After bringing him back to the palace and nursing him back to health, the stranger began speaking to Azam about the incredible technology and power that existed on the surface. Azam became fascinated. The man claimed he was a scientist and slowly introduced advanced weapons and tools to the king, proving just how superior surface technology was compared to Andorra's. Over time, Azam became obsessed with the scientist's ideas and stopped listening to anyone else. Eventually, the scientist proposed something even more dangerous. He wanted to extract Andorra's energy to help solve disasters occurring on the surface, such as droughts and wildfires. In return, he promised Azam would become a legendary ruler remembered forever by the surface world. And shockingly, Azam agreed immediately. Both Dieselin and Raifal strongly opposed the plan, warning him that tampering with Andorra's energy would eventually destroy their world. But Azam ignored every warning. Realizing how dangerous the scientist truly was, Raifal confronted him directly and threatened him to stay away from the king. But the scientist was far smarter than he expected. He intentionally injured himself and framed Raifal for the attack. When the guards arrived, it looked as though Raifal had tried to assassinate him. Enraged, Azam ordered Raifal to be executed by throwing him into the very pit where Emilio and Sean now stood. Somehow, Raifal survived. Sean, now completely absorbed in the story, immediately asked if Raifal remembered the scientist's name, but Raifal couldn't recall it. Instead, as he stared more closely at Sean, something suddenly clicked in his mind. Sean looked different from everyone in Andorra. He looked exactly like the scientist from the surface. The moment Raifal realized Sean was from the surface world, his expression twisted with uncontrollable rage. His fury became so intense that the chains restraining him suddenly snapped apart. Raifal lunged straight at Sean. Terrified, Sean instinctively tried summoning his weapon, but instead, the crystal inside him reacted on its own. A portal instantly opened, and before either of them could react, Sean and Emilio were suddenly transported straight to the surface world. Sean and Emilio stood there in complete shock after suddenly arriving on the surface. While Emilio remained frozen, unable to process what had happened, Sean instantly exploded with excitement. Without wasting a second, he grabbed Emilio and rushed straight home. The moment Sean's mother opened the door and saw him standing there alive, she could hardly believe it. She immediately hugged him tightly before noticing Emilio standing beside him and asking who he was. Sean happily introduced him as his friend, and the two entered the house together. Once they sat down, Sean began explaining everything that had happened since the moment he touched the crystal. Surprisingly, his mother didn't react with disbelief at all. Instead, she calmly admitted that she and his father had already suspected something unusual had happened after the crystal vanished. The only thing they never knew was whether Sean would ever come back. To celebrate his return, they ordered sushi, and Sean nearly lost his mind from happiness because it was the first normal meal he'd eaten in what felt like forever. Emilio, meanwhile, looked completely overwhelmed by everything around him. The food, the furniture, the lights, even the surface world itself felt alien to him. Sean reassured him and promised that tomorrow they'd visit his father at Hasenja Company so they could figure out a way to send Emilio safely back to Andorra. That night, the atmosphere became surprisingly peaceful. They stayed awake talking for hours while Sean's mother showed Emilio old childhood photos of Sean. But when Emilio noticed one particular photo, Sean immediately panicked and snatched it away in embarrassment, insisting it was too humiliating to look at. The next morning, they headed to Hasenja Company and entered the office. Sean excitedly explained everything to his father and begged him to help send Emilio back to Andorra as soon as possible. Hasenja calmly reassured Emilio that their research on the crystal had advanced significantly and that returning him wouldn't take long. Emilio thanked him politely, but deep inside, something felt wrong. As the two left the company afterward, Emilio suddenly stopped walking completely. Sean called out to him several times, but Emilio didn't respond. At that moment, forgotten memories started flooding back into his mind all at once. For the first time, he clearly remembered pieces of his childhood that had always been blurry before. He remembered the palace, he remembered King Azam, and then everything changed. Emilio suddenly recalled the face of the man who had once stood beside his father, the same man who manipulated him, the same man from Refal's story. That man was Hasenja. But the truth became even more horrifying when Emilio connected another memory together. He remembered a young child being kidnapped from the palace long ago. And when he thought back to the photograph he saw at Sean's house the previous night, the one Sean quickly hid from him, he realized something terrifying. The child in that photo was the exact same child who had been kidnapped, Sean. Sean was the missing child taken from Andorra years ago, and the one responsible for kidnapping him was Hasenja himself. Without hesitation, Emilio turned around and stormed back into the office. The moment he confronted Hasenja with the truth, the atmosphere instantly became tense. But the most terrifying part was that Hasenja didn't even try to deny it. Instead, he calmly reached for a gun, pointed it directly at them, and quietly said, "Sean, I'm not your real father." The moment Hasenja pulled out his gun and tried to kill Emilio, both him and Sean immediately ran for their lives. As they escaped, Hasenja remained alone in the office, quietly reflecting on everything that had happened over the years. And finally, the full truth was revealed. Long ago, when Hasenja first discovered the existence of Andorra's energy, he became completely obsessed with it. To him, that power was the key to becoming the greatest scientist the surface world had ever seen. From that moment on, he began traveling secretly between Andorra and the surface, using everything he learned to advance his own ambitions. At the time, Sean's mother was pregnant. One day, Hasenja excitedly told her about the crystal she had discovered and how it had transported him into another world hidden beneath the surface. He spoke endlessly about Andorra and all the incredible things he had seen there. But that same night, tragedy struck. Sean's mother suddenly became critically ill, and the child she was carrying died before it could be born. The loss shattered both of them, but instead of giving up, Hasenja's grief twisted into obsession. He returned to Andorra more determined than ever to achieve his goals no matter the cost. During one of his visits, he had dinner with King Azam and Dieselin, where he dazzled Azam with stories about the surface world and presented him with advanced technology far beyond anything Andorra possessed. The king became fascinated immediately, while Dieselin constantly warned him that allowing the surface world to interfere with Andorra would only lead to disaster. But then everything changed. Azam revealed that Dieselin's son was gravely ill and would likely die without help. The moment Hasenja heard that, he saw the perfect opportunity. He promised that if the king cooperated with his plans, he would use the surface world's advanced technology to cure the child. Desperate to save his son, Dieselin agreed without hesitation. He entrusted his child to Hasenja, believing he would take the boy to the surface for treatment and safely bring him back afterward. That child was Sean, but Hasenja never returned him. At first, it happened because Sean's mother became deeply attached to the boy and couldn't bear losing him after the death of her own child. And over time, Hasenja himself truly began loving Sean as his own son. Meanwhile, back in Andorra, Hasenja carried out the rest of his plan. He murdered King Azam. Then he destroyed Babel itself. When Dieselin finally arrived to stop him, it was already too late. Enraged, he demanded to know where his son was. But Hasenja simply laughed. "If you want your son back," he told him, "then come to the surface and take him yourself." That single moment explained everything. It was the reason Dieselin spent years desperately trying to restore Babel. Not for conquest, not for power, but to reunite with his lost son. Yet before he could succeed, Hasenja severed all connection between the worlds, destroyed Babel completely, and escaped back to the surface, using the final remaining crystal, while also stealing part of Andorra's energy for himself. Later that night, after returning home, Emilio told Sean everything he had remembered, every missing piece, every hidden truth, and finally the most shocking revelation of all. The kidnapped child from Andorra, the son Dieselin had spent years trying to save, was Sean, which meant only one thing. Sean and Emilio were cousins. The next morning, Sean woke up completely shattered. The truth he learned the night before kept replaying in his head nonstop. Everything he believed about his life, his family, and even himself had been turned upside down. Seeing how broken he was, Emilio decided to confront Hasenja personally. When he arrived, the very first thing he asked was simple: "Did you truly love Sean?" Hasenja answered immediately without hesitation. "I love Sean deeply. No matter what happens, he will always be my son." Hearing that, Emilio told him that if those feelings were genuine, then he needed to speak honestly with Sean face to face. He made a deal with Hasenja, promising to bring Sean to meet him properly. Hasenja agreed right away, but before leaving, Emilio asked one final question that still haunted him. "Why did you kill King Azam?" Hasenja let out a quiet sigh before answering. According to him, Azam had never been worthy of the throne. He described him as weak-minded, easily manipulated, and willing to betray others for selfish ambitions. In Hasenja's eyes, Dieselin had always been the far better king. Those words left Emilio completely speechless. Instead of giving him answers, they only deepened the confusion and sadness he already felt toward his father and everything surrounding the past. Meanwhile, back in Andorra, everyone was desperately searching for Emilio and Sean after their disappearance inside the dungeon. Alicia suddenly remembered something important. Emilio once told her that Sean first appeared in Andorra through the dungeon itself. That meant the same thing had probably happened again. At the same time, Pascal, Joseph, and Roni continued investigating the mystery and eventually uncovered a possible explanation. According to Pascal, Sean may have originally traveled between worlds through an ancient artifact known as the Blue Crystal. Long ago, the crystal acted as a gateway connecting Andorra and the surface. If it transported Sean before, then it likely carried both him and Emilio back to the surface this time as well. Back on the surface, Emilio returned home and sat beside Sean, encouraging him to meet Hasenja and hear everything directly from him. Despite all the horrifying truths he learned, Sean still genuinely loved his family, and because of that, he decided to give Hasenja one final chance. The two eventually arrived at the meeting place Emilio arranged. The moment Sean saw Hasenja, he asked him directly, "Do you really see me as your son?" Without hesitation, Hasenja answered, "You are my son. And no matter what happens, you always will be." For a moment, Sean simply stared at him quietly. Then he spoke again. "If that's true, then you need to stop what you're doing to Andorra." Hasenja looked confused, so Sean finally revealed the truth. The energy Hasenja had been stealing all this time was slowly killing Andorra itself. The draughts, the destruction, the suffering spreading across the world, it was all connected to him. But Hasenja refused to accept it. He argued that the energy had improved life on the surface tremendously. Pollution had decreased, entire cities benefited from it, and without the money he earned through his research, he never would have been able to save Sean's life when he was sick as a child. But Sean didn't care anymore. He looked directly into Hasenja's eyes and declared that none of those excuses mattered if innocent people in Andorra were dying because of it. "I won't let that happen," he said firmly. At those words, Hasenja's expression darkened completely. "Then you've left me no choice." Without warning, he pulled out a gun and pointed it directly at Sean. Emilio reacted instantly, throwing himself forward to protect him. And at that exact moment, the crystal inside Sean activated again. A portal burst open before them. In the blink of an eye, both Sean and Emilio vanished from the surface world and were transported back to Andorra once more. But unlike before, they didn't arrive somewhere peaceful. The moment they appeared, they found themselves right in the middle of a brutal battle where Misha, Felix, Gerardito, and Luis were desperately fighting against Ibelda. The moment Sean and Emilio suddenly appeared back in Andorra, everyone was stunned and immediately started bombarding them with questions. But there was no time to explain anything. The battle against Ibelda was still ongoing. Without hesitation, both of them summoned their weapons and charged straight into the fight. But then something horrifying happened. Ibelda transformed again. His body twisted into a gigantic monstrous form far more terrifying than before, becoming a grotesque creature that barely looked human anymore. Roaring violently, he immediately targeted Misha and attacked her with overwhelming force. Felix and Luis rushed in to protect her, but the transformed Ibelda was too powerful. He smashed both of them aside effortlessly, leaving them badly injured, especially Felix, who took a devastating hit that nearly killed him. Realizing they couldn't win against him in that state, the group was forced to retreat before anyone else died. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Elogia had isolated himself inside his room for a long time, concentrating deeply on Andorra's energy crisis. Alicia grew increasingly worried and approached the leader, telling him something felt wrong. "He's been in there too long without eating or drinking," she said nervously. "What if something happened to him?" The leader tried reassuring her, explaining that Elogia was focused on an important mission and needed complete concentration to understand what was happening to Andorra. But moments later, a loud crash suddenly came from Elogia's room. Everyone rushed inside immediately and found him collapsed unconscious on the floor. They carried him to the medical center at once. When Elogia finally regained consciousness, the group desperately asked what he had discovered. Weakly, Elogia revealed the terrifying truth. Andorra's energy is leaking away, and it's being absorbed somewhere called Ternavog. But before he could continue explaining, his body gave out again from exhaustion. The leader quickly gathered Pascal and the others to discuss what this meant. After thinking carefully, Pascal finally recognized the name. Ternavog lies in the middle of the ocean, he explained. Ancient legends claim it was once a city created by extraterrestrials. But if Elogia's vision is accurate, then those legends might actually be real. And if that was true, they needed to reach Ternavog immediately. At that exact moment, Sean and Emilio entered the room and declared that they were going too. The entire group was overjoyed to see them alive again. But the atmosphere quickly changed after Sean learned the truth about the energy leak. With guilt written all over his face, he apologized to everyone and admitted that his father, Hasenja, was the one responsible for stealing Andorra's energy. Then he told them everything. The truth about the surface, the truth about Bible, and the truth about Hasenja's crimes. Everyone was left speechless. But there was no time to process any of it. If they wanted to save Andorra, they had to stop Hasenja before it was too late. To reach Turnavog quickly, Alicia ordered Flareon to transform into his dragon form. The plan was for Sean, Emilio, and Pascal to ride ahead and investigate the city first while everyone else remained behind to protect the capital and prepare for whatever came next. For a moment, everything seemed to be going according to plan. Then disaster struck. Just as Flareon prepared to take off, Ibelda's monstrous form suddenly reappeared and blocked their path. The creature attacked instantly, slamming into Flareon before he could fly away. During the chaos, Pascal was thrown from the dragon and landed directly on Ibelda's massive body. Realizing there was no time left, Pascal made a devastating decision. He quietly pulled out an explosive device and looked toward Sean and Emilio one final time. Get to Turnavog, no matter what happens. Before either of them could stop him, Pascal activated the bomb. A massive explosion erupted instantly. The blast forced Ibelda back long enough for Flareon to finally take flight. As Sean and Emilio flew away, both of them screamed Pascal's name in horror. But it was already too late. They could only watch helplessly as the explosion consumed him behind them. From the sky, Sean and Emilio watched helplessly as Pascal fell from the back of the monstrous Ibelda after the explosion. Both of them were horrified, but there was nothing they could do. If they stopped now, Andorra itself would be doomed. So despite the pain, they continued toward Turnavog aboard Flareon. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, Joseph refused to believe Pascal was dead. While everyone else mourned, he desperately searched through the ruins and debris, convinced that Pascal had somehow survived. At the same time, the leader and the others were still struggling against Ibelda's monstrous form. No matter how many attacks they launched, the creature kept overpowering them. That was when Gerardito finally understood something. This was his responsibility. Ibelda had once been his friend. And now only he could put an end to the monster he had become. Ignoring everyone's warnings, Gerardito charged directly toward the beast. The others screamed for him to stop, but he didn't hesitate for even a second. The monster opened its massive jaws and swallowed him whole. But that was exactly what Gerardito wanted. Once inside the creature, he detonated one of Pascal's bombs from within. A massive explosion tore through the monster's body. This time, Ibelda was truly destroyed, but Gerardito died along with him. The battlefield fell silent as everyone realized what he had sacrificed to save them. Meanwhile, Joseph continued searching desperately for Pascal. After combing through the battlefield, he suddenly froze when he spotted something lying nearby. A single shoe. Pascal's shoe. Joseph's heart started racing immediately. If this is here, then Pascal must still be nearby. Without wasting another moment, he began shouting Pascal's name over and over, desperately hoping for an answer. At the same time, Sean and Emilio finally reached Turnavog. But the city was unlike anything they imagined. At its center stood an enormous tower stretching endlessly toward the sky, and floating above it was a gigantic crystal radiating an eerie glow across the entire area. The moment Sean saw it, everything clicked. That crystal, he whispered. It's draining Andorra's energy. Then he turned to Emilio and shouted, "We have to destroy it." Without hesitation, both of them summoned their weapons and attacked the crystal with full force. But just before their attacks could land, another weapon suddenly emerged from a portal and blocked them completely. Shocked, the two stepped back. Then a figure slowly walked out from the portal itself. Hasenja. A confident smirk spread across his face as he revealed that he possessed a blue crystal as well. But unlike their weapons, his had been heavily modified through his research. Instead of a normal blade, mechanical tentacle-like arms extended from his weapon, moving with terrifying speed and precision while acting as both offense and defense at the same time. And just like that, the final battle began. Joseph kept screaming Pascal's name across the battlefield, refusing to believe he was gone. Just as hope was beginning to fade, he finally heard a weak response in the distance. Without thinking, Joseph sprinted toward the voice. And there he was. Pascal was hanging from a tree nearby, somehow still alive. The moment Joseph saw him safe, relief hit him so hard he nearly broke down crying. He quickly helped Pascal climb down, and together they prepared to head back to the palace. Meanwhile, the battle at Turnavog had reached its climax. Hasenja completely overwhelmed Emilio, striking him down with such force that he couldn't even stand anymore. At the same time, Sean was trapped by the mechanical tentacle arms of Hasenja's weapon, unable to move or fight back. Slowly, Hasenja raised one of the giant mechanical arms toward Sean. This was supposed to be the end. But right before the killing blow landed, he stopped. Suddenly, memories flooded his mind. Sean as a child, the years they spent together, the family moments they shared. For the first time, Hasenja hesitated. No matter how far he had fallen, he still couldn't bring himself to kill the son he had raised. And in that exact moment, Emilio forced himself back onto his feet. Seeing Sean in danger awakened something inside him. His emotions exploded, and his weapon evolved into an even more powerful form. Without hesitation, Emilio charged forward and unleashed one final devastating strike. The attack cut straight through Hasenja, and this time, he died. But there was no feeling of victory afterward. Sean lowered his head silently, grieving the man who raised him despite all the terrible things he had done. Emilio apologized immediately, blaming himself for killing him. But Sean simply looked at him and said, "You saved me." With Hisenja gone, the massive crystal above Ternavog began spiraling out of control. The entire city started collapsing around them. Just before it was too late, Flareon swooped in and rescued both Sean and Emilio, carrying them away as Ternavog crumbled apart behind them. When they finally returned to the palace, the entire capital erupted in celebration after learning that Andorra had been saved. For the first time in a long while, people could finally smile again. A massive celebration was held throughout the city, and everyone gathered together in relief and happiness. But in the middle of it all, Sean quietly slipped away alone. Emilio noticed and followed after him. Standing together beneath the night sky, Sean finally admitted the truth. He couldn't stay in Andorra forever. No matter how much he cared about everyone there, his mother was now alone on the surface after losing Hisenja. He couldn't abandon her too. Emilio understood completely, but deep down, the thought of saying goodbye hurt more than he expected. For one final time, the two shook hands silently, not as strangers from different worlds anymore, but as brothers who survived countless battles together. Then Sean focused on the blue crystal inside his chest and used his emotions to open one last portal back to the surface. The moment he stepped through it, the crystal fell from his body and shattered into pieces. The final connection between the two worlds was gone forever. Even after returning home though, Sean never forgot Andorra. The adventures he experienced there, the people he met, and the bonds he formed stayed with him for the rest of his life.